Itbana bin Malik, the chief of Banu Salim, was prevented from attending the services at the masjid of his community by environmental and, more commonly, by physical conditions of himself. And he invited Prophet Muhammad to come over. And Muhammad asked, where do you want the place of prayer to be? And he showed him. And so Muhammad led them all in 2 bows worth of ritual prayer. And then they had something to eat. But to this day, whether it's a place dedicated for a whole community or for an individual to have a place set aside with the same rules as a mosque, it has become the custom to say 2 bows of the prayer, and preferably in congregation, of course. The narration before that relates how Masjid al-Aqsa, the Mount Moriah or Jerusalem or whatever, was built 40 years after Masjid al-Haram. And that doesn't necessarily mean Abraham, but in terms of Abraham's life, I guess that was the how it's related. But also thought about the first, civilized human, Adam. But that part of that is not there. But the point was the one before the other, and that the whole earth is supposed to be a place of worship for, ritual prayers and masjid. Ashab Sufa, in narration 752, came to Aisha's house to eat with the Prophet, and they were told that they could either sleep in the masjid or sleep outside of the mosque. And they took the choice to sleep outside of the mosque. And that has helped towards the fact that in the Islamic world, one of the things that a person does not do is become a monk. So had there always been people sleeping in the masjid just to, sleep in the masjid, and it kind of takes the edge off of the retreat if it's a usual thing, and it's not this solemn opportunity that you make for the last 10 nights of Ramadan, or, well, technically you go in before sunset that starts the 20th, according to some narrations. And I mean, you don't have to the whole time. Some people think, well, if you don't all 10 or 11 days, and that's not true at all. The narration before that is that people would sleep in the masjid. And, of course, the implication is it's not just an itikaf thing. But, I mean, when you're there, why not keep that intention for, at least after the dusk prayer to the dawn prayer. Narration 750 says that we should keep the infants, the insane, and the evil ones. So, the people who would make a mess are the people who would cause problems, whether of their fault or not of their fault, from the masjid. And also, it's a place to avoid doing business. It's a place to avoid being loud. It's a place to avoid arguing or carrying out any prescribed punishment. Keep your weapons sheathed or, secured, covered. And have places for purification next to them. So this reminds us that the place to wash up is not a masjid. I guess maybe technically you can call a mosque the whole building, but the masjid is only the place that you pray. So anywhere that's never for that, you know, even, I mean, you can say religious things and whatnot in the sink area or whatnot. I mean, you know, the place with the toilet, that's different. But yeah, so, you know, typically the place where the shoes are and you wash up is typically how you enter. Although some buildings were taken over, you know, not, you know, taken over in terms of bought out and stuff like that. Um, and these rules, of course, apply to any place, like this room that we're in here. It's not a place for secular talk. And 749 indicates that they're not places for buying, selling, and the reciting of poetry is forbidden therein. There's incidences where poetry that was religiously sound was said or even encouraged, but there's no indication in those narrations in Muslim or Bukhari or any of the other places that I've seen them that this was done in a masjid. And narration 748 reminds us that it's not a place to carry in through it place things like raw meat. I guess nowadays during around Eid al-Adha time, people will hand out stuff, but they hand out stuff, you know, meat in packages, usually frozen. So that's different. It's not a place to fire weapons across. You know, we find elsewhere that it's not a place to play musical instruments going by the place. You know, the ringing, you know, like muffle the bells of the cows and stuff like that. I mean, you can have a bell on your cow, obviously. You're just told to muffle it when you know, go by. Or, well, I mean, other animals too, I guess. Nowadays, it's more likely to be people's dogs, but that's another issue for somewhere else. Yeah, it's not a thoroughfare place of mere entertainment. Of course, it can be a place of the higher entertainment, you can say, but not, you know, it's not a place to sport. Narration 747 talks about the places that it's not allowed to do the ritual or contact prayer or orisons, however you're going to translate that. The top of the Kaaba, graveyards, the dumps, the bathrooms, the main roads, the slaughterhouses, and the places where camels are resting. You know, step aside from the flocks. In other words, well, I don't know the word for a group of camels. The narration before that says, likewise, narration 746 mentions not the washrooms. You know, the place where you wash up. I don't mean the place with the toilet. I mean, you know, because obviously people are cleaning up after impurities and you can slip and all sorts of issues that would make it not the best place in a physical sense. Other narrations say not performing the ritual prayer inside of the Kaaba. I've seen that on video. People have done that, but narration 744 says that if manure's been thrown into a garden and it's been poured upon several times, then it is permissible to perform the ritual prayers there. Narration before that indicates that the Masjid at-Ta'if was a place that the rebels used to be worshipped, but that's fine if the Taghut were worshipped at a place. It's how you use a place from henceforth. And Masjid at-Ta'if I think I said the ah instead of, Narration 742 indicates Masjid an-Nabi was a place where there were graves of idolaters and a palm grove. And before that, before it was built, he would say the prayer wherever he was. But they cleared the graves and moved them elsewhere.